Well, Feed the Hungry hosted a food giveaway today. It's feeding nearly 200 people.
We want to do something a little different versus just feeding them. We want to empower them and ask them to go back to school, to look at job training.
It was a great turnout as over 100 families in need came for help and left with bags of food.
And they say this is just the beginning.
Savannah Feed the Hungry was founded in November 2009 and offers free hot meals, job placement services, and free furniture and clothes in addition to produce to many people. Well before the organization formed, its founder Carl Gilliard had visions of a movement and knew that hunger could affect anyone.
The theme that we have is there's no boundaries to hunger. My mother started doing feedings in her house every Christmas morning. She feed the neighborhood, the homeless, and those that were the esteemed. She'd invite everyone in. And it's the same concept that hunger knows no boundaries.
I've been in this community for around 40 years. And Carl Gilliard has become a name that's synonymous with missionary or feeding the hungry.
In the late 80s and early 90s, Carl's name was synonymous with causes such as stopping gun violence and drug use in communities in Savannah.
I've known Carl Gilliard since he was a rapper back in the 80s when he was with Project Love, and they were an activist group also. They would go through the community, and one chant they would have, "We fired up, can't take it no more. Get off the crack and take your neighborhood back."
Carl headed various organizations and initiatives to combat crime in Savannah, including Project Love, Inc., the largest youth organization of its time. In 1995, Carl accepted the call to ministry and was ordained. For 10 years, he hosted a TV show in Savannah and hosted a radio show called Tell It Like It Is on WSOK. It was this experience that landed him a job in the auto industry.
Someone heard me on radio one day and they asked me to be the spokesperson for Fairway Kia back then. And I said, no, car business is not for me. Well, I ended up getting involved, became their spokesperson, and they created a position called Outreach Coordinator. So then I ended up going to the Vaden organization. I've been recruited to go to the Vaden organization and how great it was and how good it was. I was a little bit timid because I really did not want to be in the car business.
But Carl continued in the business and worked in sales at Vaden Nissan, becoming one of their top salesmen, and moved up in different positions. Things were going well until
they recruited me to go to the mothership, Dan Vaden. And that's where we meet all the veterans that are far beyond better than me. And we did well the very first year, was on my way to becoming Salesman of the Year. And then the recession hit the very next year. And that's when things began to change. And Georgia has this great law that I don't have to give you an excuse for letting you go. And I came in after selling the car and they said, well, we're gonna have to let you go. We're gonna move you if you wanna move, but we're gonna let you go. So I said, well, God, this must be my way of your answering my call, because I talked to him every year around December, and I would say to my customers and to my family, this is it.
One day he came home, he was working at Dan Vaden Nissan, and he sat down, myself and my family, and he told us that he had got laid off. And it was like maybe 3 days before Thanksgiving holiday. And we all kind of was sitting there, kind of shocked. That's when the financial woes had came across America.
And at that time, I just bought a new house. We had been, blessed to get into a real good house, and finally to the point of your life where you're seeing things. Just bought a new car. I would always, catch a ride with my wife. My wife, as long as my family were taken care of all those years. And I had to give it up. They didn't take it from me. I just said, I cannot afford this car. I cannot afford this mortgage.
We tried to sustain where we was at and where we was going and how we was going to make it. And we stuck together as long as possible. Time really did get hard. With that Thanksgiving season, we had a friend who invited us over because we didn't have any money at the time for Thanksgiving. Our funds was low.
I was numb because this happened 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was numb.
Carl, his wife, and children packed up and left their home on the south side of Savannah and moved to Garden City.
Now keep in mind, Garden City was the place that God originally called me. He showed me the building. He told me I was supposed to be there. And that's where I was supposed to start everything. But we had a ministry that was on Television Circle. My family was paying for the ministry. So the average day at our service would be a pack house, but we were funding the church. So you're looking at the funding of a ministry, the funding of your house, and then your transportation. So we come into Garden City in a 15-passenger van, and then now, here's the culture shock.
We moved to a house in Garden City. It was so small, like all us was in one room, Mama was in one room. It was like really small, like the front door and the back door was like right there. So we like literally had, like at the end of the school year, for us, like we just up and switched schools. We've been with these kids since forever. We had to go like meet new kids, and it was like, all us are social, but we was really depressed, and we were young.
It's a transition. You know, faith, the Bible says now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. We could not see it when we believed it, and it had to be now. When we moved out of the hotels, things didn't get great. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment, and I really thought I had a phobia of claustrophobia. I thought I was gonna die, because when you come out of a big house to come into this, your walls begin to close in. Keep in mind, there's still no revenue coming in.
I remember one time my husband was sitting on the couch and he was real low. And I told him that we wasn't gonna leave him, you know, and we was all gonna stay together. And he looked at me and it was like, we got you. And then I began to get little jobs and try to bring income in.
The most powerful thing that my wife and my children said to me is that we will not give up on you. And we're gonna stick with you, we're gonna walk with you. And that became my legs from being able to collapse and continue to roll forward. And it was probably at that point that I realized I was in the fight for my life. And if I didn't believe, this was a test of my faith.
It was difficult, but we all had to realize that we had to be his backbone, because if we got depressed, we show him our weakness about the situation, he'll get depressed.
Now we get to the point that we meet Elizabeth Omalami, who is Reverend Jose Williams' daughter, and we meet Mr. Omalami. And we, at the time I was president of SCLC, and we were bringing our state convention down, and they said, who do you want the speaker to be? And I said, Dick Gregory and Mrs. Omalami. And so we got what we wanted. At the time, Reverend Jose Williams, from my prior life in college, was my mentor. So I had a promissory to him that I would finish the race. And so when I met Mrs. Omalami, I didn't think about Jose Feed the Hungry. And it was at that time that I knew destiny started connecting. So going through the transition of being in that house, having a state convention, having Mrs. Omalami, we began to talk, and she said, why don't you think about doing something in Savannah? I said, I've always wanted to. So 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, we did Feed the Hungry.
We just walked with him and believed in him and didn't give up. And even with us going without, you know, Feed the Hungry became a life of his own.
In 2009, Carl and his family sponsored a citywide Thanksgiving dinner for the homeless and working poor. After seeing the overwhelming response from the community, it was clear that hosting dinners once a month was not enough. So Carl founded Savannah Feed the Hungry, a nonprofit 501c3.
And we realized that there are a lot of more people that are even more less fortunate because they don't have a roof over their head. They don't have a family together because families have broken apart a lot during the recession. So we start Feed the Hungry not knowing what we're doing.
Despite not knowing what they were doing, the family cranked into high gear to help others, though it proved to be a struggle juggling home and the organization.
In our need, we was feeding other people when we didn't even have food. Our bills wasn't being met. We just trust God and believe, you know, we took our focus off for ourselves and began to try to help other people, and God was providing.
So we was like, how can you start an organization to feed people? And you know, we was, as the siblings wasn't really too much for it.
So when he first came to us about the idea, it was like, are you serious? Because we really didn't have anything ourselves. So we was like, how are we gonna go out and feed other people and stuff? And help other people when we need help ourselves.
And when he started feeding everybody, we'll look like, why? Because we don't have nothing, but you giving all we had when you got laid off to these people, and they getting fed, but we're not. We didn't have anything. So now looking at the years that's came and that's here now, we thank him for doing that, because that brought us from where we used to be.
It was many nights like we didn't have food at our house, but yet he was out feeding people, and it was like, how can you sit there and feed other people and your house doesn't have any food? It been plenty of times where when he finally got a building for Feed the Hungry, he would make sure the bills at Feed the Hungry everything was taken care of. Our lights and stuff would be off. Some nights we slept at Feed the Hungry because like we didn't have what we needed at home. So it was kind of like, as kids, for like a long time, we was depressed until we kind of got older and we was like, okay, it's bigger than us. Like, it's plenty of people who going through the same thing, but we started seeing the bigger picture.
The bigger picture was to take Feed the Hungry's vision and mission to the next level of outreach. Feed the Hungry worked to aid and restore dignity to the working poor and homeless by moving individuals and families to self-sufficiency. As support and donations rolled in, more time and attention was put into Feed the Hungry, which was a family affair.
It was really hard. Like, one thing my dad really pushes us at, as far as my mom and all our siblings, he always say, put your game face on. So it was plenty of times we'd be serving at Feed the Hungry. We played multiple roles.
When it first started, we started off small, brown bags, packing up vegetables and stuff like that. And it was only a little bit of us. We was young, helping our dad, getting out of school, going straight to go help him.
It's difficult, to be a servant. We have to put a lot of stuff on hold, to make sure others are great and others are good, and which is make us feel good.
Well, we all had roles. But my role, I would choose if it was a lot of people to do produce, load the truck, unload it. I would be, and my little sister would be the person who would load the truck, put the boxes up, unpack all the type of stuff for us to Feed the Hungry.
I always ride to go pick up the produce, and we unload the produce. We fix bags and just continue to serve every week, help give back to the community.
We would try to keep our game face on, but we had a lot of breakdown moments, and it's we didn't want to break down completely to see so they can see that we were weak, because we were trying to build a organization to help others.
There was a produce company called MPG, Sea Island Produce, who we still are with today. And they talked to me about, what do you think about giving out some produce to the people? I said, sure. We didn't know what we were doing. So in the very inception, when we would get this produce, we would give it out, and then we would find out we had a need to where we're going to keep it. So now we step out of a two-bedroom house or apartment that we're barely being able to take care of from whatever lasting savings. And then now we're talking about feeding people. We realized at that time that it wasn't about us.
As the need grew even larger, Feed the Hungry enlisted volunteers to donate time and/or resources to help. Each volunteer has a unique story of what brought them to Savannah Feed the Hungry.
When he was on Telfair, he started out on Telfair Road, and one of my church members told me, she said, there's a place on Telfair Road that they give away fresh veggie. You should come sometime. And I said, okay, but I never did. And so she finally reminded me. So one day, curiosity, I went and I parked, and people were down the street in a line. So I went in, and they were Pastor Nathaniel working with Carl at that time, Pastor Gilliard. And he said to me, I never seen the man before. I spoke to him, I'm a person who speaks to everybody. So I said, how's everybody? And he said, hey, how are you? And he said, welcome, good to see you. Your first time? I said, yes, first time. And by the time I got up to pick my veggie, he came up to me. He said, you know what? It's in my spirit. You will be a good person to help us volunteer. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, and by the time I got my bag and I came back by, I thought about it. And I said, okay, when? And he said, be here Tuesday. And so I showed up on Tuesday. And that's been really 7 years, when you think about it, 7 years ago. And I've been there ever since.
down at Forsyth Park, I met up with him, and he was doing some rallies, I think, for through the Southern Leadership Conference and the teachers. I'm not sure what it was, but that's where I met up with him. It was kind of an area where a lot of activism was going on, and he had let me know about his Feed the Hungry program. And what interested me is that he was going to offer fresh vegetables. And that piqued my interest, and of course, it came to be that was the main thing that he was going to do, even in between the dinners.
One evening, there was a activity at the City Hall in Garden City. It was like a carnival, and I met Mr. Gilliard there. He had a stand, and he was giving food away. And the people were passing by, and he was calling them to come and get the food. It was free. That night there was a big crowd, and there were a lot of Spanish people going by. And he was calling them to come in, and the Spanish people kind of hesitated to get close to the stand where he was. Many people did not understand that it was free food, and Mr. Gilliard didn't know how to tell them that it was free. So as I went by, I stopped and see what was going on. So I got close to him and I asked him if it was okay for me to talk to the people. So that's how I met Mr. Gilliard. I started talking to the people. People started gathering around and started taking the food.
The volunteers that help with call Pastor Gilliard, it's amazing. They work, they bring in all the food, they bring in, they cook it, and I have never heard any of them gripe, because they know what this program means to them, and most of them probably sat down and ate because they didn't have anything. So I'm glad. I sit down and I eat the food that Mother Middleton cooks.
We give away each week. We do no less than 200 bags, but we give away each week from 200 to 500 bags of food, and sometime more. We do that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. But then sometime, if there is emergency, then we do it any day of the week.
I talked to Mr. Gilliard, and he told me about his program that he had for Feed the Hungry. So it sounded very interesting to me, and I had been looking for something to do for my community, and this was a very, very special thing for me to do with him.
I've known him probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I met him through the station because he does work closely with the station. And I just, whenever he needs something, now he just calls and, Nita, I need you, and I'm there with him.
Yeah, I don't see so many volunteers come and go. It's a lot of people who just come and go, who just can't stay around, Not saying that we just kick them out and stuff, they just don't know. Some people just don't stay around. But the people who've been there from the beginning, they're Mother Middleton and stuff, they've been there from the very beginning. And they care for my dad. I'm the person, I'm the daughter, I'm the one you gotta, if you're not treating my dad right, I don't want nothing to do with you. Now speak on it. So dumb people like Mother Middleton, they always been there for him and really care for him. So people like that, we treat them like our family, because if you love us like family, you are our family. So I appreciate that.
And then there were times that the lines were beginning to become very, very long. And I had these 2 senior citizens that would come there every day, and they would just peel potatoes and bag them. And sooner or later, I get to the point where I'd be like, why are they sitting here every day? Why are they doing all this? They've been here all this week, and they're messing up the front. But they kept peeling, they kept bagging. So it went on for about 2 weeks. One particular day, the line was around the building, and everybody was saying, you know, Reverend Gilliard, I appreciate what you're doing. I was boohoo crying walking in front of them, and they didn't even see me crying. And I was talking to God as I walked into the warehouse saying, God, you told me to feed your people. How am I going to feed your people when we're out of food? And when I went back into the freezer, that the freezers were full with everything that those two elders had been doing that fed over 400 people that day. So God started revealing that you held me to what you said. And then I started speaking to him, and everything I kept saying from then on was, you said, and the wheels began to turn.
I'm just proud of the people and the volunteers that believed in Pastor Gilliard and what he was trying to do, feed people. And we had a great support of volunteers, because Feed the Hungry wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the volunteers. The same people as we served in the lines became our volunteers, the one that got behind the scenes and began to bless other families, because we all was once in the line without. And so Feed the Hungry is real, it's real powerful with the network of the people.
Things even began to turn around at home for Carl and his family.
I started getting these great checks that were supposed to come called unemployment checks. I started filing for unemployment. It never happened. It never happened. And I got a Christmas bonus from the Vaden organization that was due to me. Mr. Vaden would always take out about $10 and match it to how many cars you sold. I sold the most cars in 1 year. So if I did over 300 and some odd cars, I had an additional bonus of $3,000 some odd dollars. So I got my bonus check, and I took my bonus check, and we got our first warehouse, which was on Telfair. And we started actually getting more produce, and the lines began to grow in 1 week. We did not know what we were doing. So a lot of the surplus actually went bad because we didn't have refrigerated units. We were just giving it out.
We could only give them soda and bread, and we give them that. But you know, you feel bad when you see little children with them and you can't give them anything else.
What I realized then is I kept applying for those checks. My wife called me one day and said one day the lights were out, the water was off. We're still feeding people, families still going through. At that point, one day she called me up and said, you gotta come out here, you gotta come out here. She's sitting inside of the van. She's got about 20 envelopes. In each envelope was an unemployment check that was backed up that they had owed me. So I had about 20 checks that came in at one time. That's when I started seeing God move.
People are very thankful, very gracious. I know, I'm adding another thing. I'm also a teacher at Gaston Elementary, which is right across the street from here. All my children come from Fraser and Kane homes, and he's always here. They come out here, I think, once a week. And when they see the truck coming, the kids come running. You know, the families come, and everybody's very appreciative and very thankful, because a lot of these families, they need it.
The dinners are the happiest moments because you get to see how everybody comes together. As a family, we all come together into being at the dinners and helping other people, like feeding them, giving them clothes, Christmas time, giving them kids toys. To see it put a smile on their face and put a smile on my face.
Mr. Gilliard came into the Hispanic community. He has let people know that we're here. It means life for a lot of people. Like I said, not only with feeding them the food, it's the cares that he has for the people, making sure that they have, like I said, groceries, but they have electricity, they have water, they have a roof over their head. He means life for a lot of people.
The enjoyment that I get when I can see the people eating and enjoying the food at the round table, and just going to talk to them and say, how are you doing? And they was like, I'm doing good. And they begin to say, thank you. And you know, they touch your heart,
because you have a real moment, and it's not for show. It's out of love, because we never know what somebody's going through.
Carl understood that Feed the Hungry had to go beyond just the community, but elected officials had to also be held accountable to make sure that the needs of the community and the people in it are being met.
Savannah Feed the Hungry, it empowers the entire community. There are trucks from Savannah Feed the Hungry that come to people like myself in different areas of Savannah, different days out the week. And I see the young kids that go home hungry or go to school hungry. And we have all these resources stockpiled someplace, and it really upsets me. And when we can have people like Savannah Feed the Hungry and Carl Gilliard and their organizations that come together and we all work together, we can do a lot for our kids.
We got to be at the table. There is no excuse when an elected official that's in the top seat in their city tells me we don't have it in our budget. There are contingency budgets. There are grants that communities can collaborate and get. Poverty is one of the biggest essential grants right now in America. The Walmarts have them, the Targets. You can apply through everyone because poverty is a big focus. We have municipalities across this country that have to get involved to do something, and they can. They should not just leave it up to social service organizations. They give money to those entities, and then they have to be watchdogs to govern them.
We would love to eradicate poverty, but realistically we know that we did not reach 26% poverty level overnight. We feel that with a job, if people can get a job, a regular paycheck coming in, if people can provide for their families, if people can become better educated, better trained in skills, we equip them with marketable skills so they can take care of themselves.
Port Wentworth is not like any other, it's not like, no different than any other city, you know. Maybe we are in denial that we have people in need, but we have people in need that need hot food, and that type of program needs to be implemented in every city.
At a certain level, there's not anything we can do. Okay, there's a certain level that we have to worry about the youngest and take that age group and move forward with them, and let's say this is our long-term goal, because that'll take care of the poverty and the crime both, but you have to start at a young age.
We definitely need to look out for the people that we represent, and he definitely represents me.
Feed the Hungry impact has stretched far and wide beyond the city of Savannah throughout many other cities in the state of Georgia. To date, Feed the Hungry has served over 450,000 servings of hot meals and fresh produce. Carl, his family, and the volunteers will continue to grow Savannah Feed the Hungry. Carl understands, just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did, that there must be a community change to really make an impact, and Carl hopes to continue what Dr. Martin Luther King started in the Poor People's Campaign.
I have seen Carl's dream get bigger and bigger. And I think it's become something that he becomes involved with, or he sees through the same thing that I do. And that is getting out and exposing himself to different things. He has told me on several occasions that not only does he want to feed the hungry, and again, it's not just the homeless. I mean, when he's downtown, they deal with the homeless. And sometimes we have taken dinners to like the shelters and different things like that. But sometimes, depending on where he has them, they're more the working poor.
Feed the Hungry goes to the working poor. There are those like Union Mission and all those that do a great job dealing with the homeless. That is not, we're in homeless prevention. We want to prevent the working poor from being homeless.
We also deal with placement, trying to help the homeless find a place. And also Goodwill, again, is good. Goodwill on Montgomery, that's one of our places. And as long as they have an opening, they will place them there. So we also do that. We also set up job fairs, and we try to help them get jobs.
The theme that we have is there are no boundaries to hunger. We also need to send the message that, you know, that there are new faces to hunger, and they look just like you and me. They're the teachers, they're the employees at Gulfstream. My son, who was in the military, was in the military, but he didn't have any food. Families in the military that are in their entry levels that don't have food because of their pay grade.
I think through dealing with the working poor, he finds that jobs, re-educating, giving the opportunity to these people to help themselves becomes something that he's not happy with just feeding them.
It's dealing with empowerment, career fair, job fair, health fair. In the next year, we're looking for a building to do a resource center where we plant those colleges that we've gotten a commitment for to let them bring people on site at that location, get them back into school, and offer classes from canning with the USDA kitchen, certified kitchen, so that you can start your own businesses from canned produce to barbecue. Ways of economic development in reference to that resource center. To expand into about maybe 20 more cities in the state of Georgia, that we can see those cities on their feet, because we will not affect the level of poverty unless we get a system that's working. And what we see is it breaking the barriers of racism, breaking the barriers of classism. When you bring people together to eat and to feed them, you can talk to them then. We Feed the Hungry have become the authorities on the working poor because we've been there. Those volunteers have come from all walks of life. It's not one church, it's not one organization, it's not one denomination. It's young people, it's elders. We are truly an army feeding an army.